I handed in my resignation on a Tuesday morning. 15 years of arriving at 7:30 sharp, 15 years of making sure his coffee was exactly the way he liked it, 2 sugars and just enough cream to turn it the color of caramel. 15 years of watching Marcus Thornton move through that office like he owned not just the company, but the very air we breathed. And maybe he did. Maybe that's what made it so impossible to leave, and so absolutely necessary. The envelope sat on his desk while he read through quarterly reports, his reading glasses perched on his nose in that way that always made my chest tight. He didn't look up right away. That was Marcus. Everything in its time, everything given the exact amount of attention it deserved. No more, no less. I stood there like I'd stood 1,000 times before, waiting for him to acknowledge me, except this time my hands were shaking. "Sit down, James," he said finally, still not looking up. His voice had that quality it always did, warm like bourbon, but with an edge that could cut through steel when he needed it to. I sat. I'd been sitting in that chair across from his desk since I was 23 years old, fresh out of college with a business degree I didn't know what to do with, and a secret I was absolutely certain would ruin my life if anyone ever found out. He took off his glasses and looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt like I was 23 again. Those eyes, gray like a winter sky, had seen me through promotions and presentations, through my mother's funeral and my father's remarriage to a woman half his age. They'd seen me show up with a black eye once, after I'd made the mistake of going to the wrong bar in the wrong part of town and being too honest with the wrong person. He'd never asked about it, just made sure I had ice, and that I left early that day. 15 years, he said, tapping the envelope against his desk. "That's a long time, James." "Yes, sir." The "sir" was habit. He'd told me 100 times to call him Marcus, but it never felt right. There was always this distance between us, this carefully maintained professional boundary that I'd built like a fortress around whatever the hell it was I felt when I looked at him. He opened the envelope slowly, deliberately, and I watched his eyes scan the single page. My resignation letter was brief, professional. It thanked him for the opportunities, mentioned personal growth and new directions, all the corporate speak that meant nothing and everything at the same time. What it didn't say was that I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't spend another day watching him exist just beyond my reach. I couldn't keep pretending that working late was about dedication instead of stealing a few more minutes in his presence. I couldn't keep going home to my empty apartment and wondering what it would be like if things were different, if I was different, if he was different. "You're not giving me much notice," he said finally. 2 weeks is standard, but for someone at your level, someone who knows this company like you do, I'd expect at least a month. "I know, I'm sorry, I trailed off because, what could I say? I just can't be around you anymore without wanting things I can't have. I just realized that I've built my entire adult life around being close to you and it's killing me." He set the letter down and leaned back in his chair, that expensive leather one that creaked in a way I'd recognize anywhere. "Where are you going?" "I don't have another job lined up yet." His eyebrows rose. That surprised him. Good. I'd surprised him so rarely over the years. I'd been reliable, dependable, boring James, who never made waves and always had the answer he needed before he asked the question. "That's not like you," he said. "Maybe that's the problem." The words hung between us, and I saw something flicker across his face, something I couldn't quite name. He stood up and walked to the window that overlooked the city, his back to me. It was November, and the sky was that particular shade of gray that matched his eyes, heavy with the promise of snow. "I've been offered a position in Seattle," I said, and it was only half a lie. A former colleague had mentioned they were hiring. I hadn't applied, I probably wouldn't. But I needed to give him something, some rational explanation for why I was throwing away 15 years of career building. "Seattle's a long way from here." "That's kind of the point." He turned around, and there was something in his expression I'd never seen before. "What are you running from, James?" "Everything. You, myself. This feeling that's been eating me alive since the first day I walked into this office and saw you standing exactly where you're standing now, backlit by that same window, looking like everything I never knew I wanted and could never let myself have. I'm not running from anything," I said instead. "I'm running towards something, a fresh start, new opportunities." "Bullshit." I blinked. In 15 years, I'd never heard him curse at me. Around me, sure, when a deal fell through or a client was being difficult, but never at me, never directed at me with that kind of intensity. Excuse me? He crossed the room and sat on the edge of his desk, closer than he'd ever been during a professional conversation. I could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle that I'd probably be able to identify blind. I said, bullshit, James. You don't quit a job you're good at, that pays you well, where you're respected and valued, to chase some vague idea of a fresh start. People do that when they're unhappy, and you've never seemed unhappy here. So what changed? Nothing changed, that's the problem. Everything's exactly the same as it's always been, and I just woke up one day and realized I can't do the same thing for another 15 years. I can't be the person who just exists in the margins of someone else's life forever. The words came out harsher than I intended, and I saw him flinch, actually flinch, like I'd hit him. Is that what you think you've been doing, existing in the margins? What else would you call it? I stood up because sitting while he loomed over me was too much, too intimate, too dangerous. I'm your assistant, Marcus. A very well-paid, very skilled assistant, but that's all I am. That's all I've ever been. That's all you've ever let yourself be. Now it was my turn to flinch. What's that supposed to mean? He ran a hand through his hair, and I noticed for the first time that there was more gray in it than there used to be. When had that happened? How had I missed it? But I knew how. I'd been so busy trying not to look at him too long, trying not to let my eyes linger, that I'd missed the small changes that 15 years brings to a person. I offered you a junior partnership 3 years ago, he said. You turned it down. I offered you the chance to head the new division we were opening in Boston. You turned that down too. Every time I've tried to promote you, to give you more responsibility, more visibility, you found a reason to say no. You've kept yourself in that assistant role, James, not me. Because I'm good at it. Because it's what I know. Because it's safe, he corrected. Because as long as you're just my assistant, you don't have to risk anything. You don't have to put yourself out there. You don't have to let anyone really see you. My heart was pounding so hard, I was sure he could hear it. You don't know anything about me. Don't I? He stood up from the desk, and we were close enough now that I could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. I know you take your coffee black because you think adding anything to it is wasteful. I know you donate 20% of your salary to LGBTQ youth organizations because I signed off on the charitable contribution forms. I know you spend your weekends at that little bookstore on 5th Street because I've seen you there. I know you haven't dated anyone seriously in all the time you've worked for me because you think I don't notice when you show up Monday morning with that particular kind of loneliness hanging off you like a coat. I couldn't breathe. All these years, I thought I'd been so careful, so guarded, and he'd seen right through me the whole time. Why are you saying this? My voice came out barely above a whisper. Because you're quitting, and I've spent 15 years being your boss, being professional, maintaining appropriate boundaries, and apparently, I'm about to lose my chance to ever be anything else. The world tilted. I actually felt dizzy, like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. Marcus. I'm 52 years old, James. I've built a successful company. I've made more money than I know what to do with. I have the respect of my peers and industry recognition, and all the things I was supposed to want. And none of it means a damn thing compared to the fact that for 15 years, the best part of my day has been when you walk through that door in the morning. You can't say things like that. I was backing away, putting distance between us because if I didn't, I was going to do something catastrophically stupid. You're my boss. There are rules. You just quit. I'm not your boss anymore. And in 2 weeks, I won't even be that. You can't just... I spent 15 years convincing myself this was impossible. What if you were wrong? I laughed, and it came out broken. What if I wasn't? What if I walk out of here in 2 weeks and never see you again, and at least I still have the memory of 15 years of working together instead of ruining it by trying to make it into something it can't be? Or what if you walk out of here in 2 weeks and spend the rest of your life wondering what if? He closed the distance I'd created between us. I'm not good at this, James. I've spent my whole life being controlled, being measured, being exactly what I'm supposed to be. I married the right woman, had the right career, lived in the right neighborhood. And I was miserable. The divorce was the first honest thing I'd done in 20 years, and even then I couldn't quite bring myself to admit why I was really unhappy. When? The question came out before I could stop it. When did you get divorced? 14 years ago, 6 months after you started working here. Oh God. All this time, I'd assumed he was straight, unavailable, completely out of reach. I'd built my entire careful distance on that assumption. Why didn't you ever say anything? For the same reason you didn't, because it was inappropriate, because I was your boss and you were my employee and there were power dynamics and professional ethics and 1,000 good reasons to keep my mouth shut. He reached out slowly, giving me every chance to pull away, and touched my face. Just a gentle touch, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone. But you're leaving, and I've run out of time to be appropriate. I closed my eyes because looking at him while he touched me like that was too much. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. I've been alone for 14 years because everyone I met felt like a pale imitation of the person I saw every single day and couldn't have. Marcus, if this goes wrong, it's already wrong, James. We've wasted 15 years because we were both too afraid to risk it. I don't want to waste any more. I opened my eyes and looked at him, really looked at him, without all the careful barriers I'd constructed. And what I saw was fear and hope and longing that mirrored everything I'd been feeling for longer than I wanted to admit. I don't even know how this works, I said. I've never, with someone from work, with someone who knows me like you do. Then we figure it out, together, slowly. We have dinner. We talk about things that aren't quarterly reports and client meetings. We see if this thing between us is real, or if it's just 15 years of proximity and longing. And if it's real, then we deal with the complications. HR will have a field day, and we'll probably need to restructure your position. But James, I've spent 15 years watching you from across this desk and wishing I had the courage to risk everything for the chance to be close to you. I'm done being a coward. I thought about Seattle, about running away to a city where it rained all the time and nobody knew me. I thought about starting over, building a new life, finding someone who didn't come with 15 years of complicated history. And then I thought about walking away from Marcus, from this moment, from the possibility of something I'd wanted for so long, I'd forgotten how to want anything else. I'm scared, I admitted. Good, me too. If we weren't scared, it wouldn't matter as much. He was still touching my face, and I leaned into it without meaning to, like a plant turning towards sunlight. 15 years of careful distance, of professional boundaries, of convincing myself that what I felt was manageable, containable, something I could live with. And in one conversation, it had all come crashing down. I need time, I said. I need to think about this, about what it means. Take all the time you need. But James... He waited until I met his eyes. Don't run to Seattle because you're afraid. Run towards something because you want it, not away from something because it scares you. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He dropped his hand, and the loss of contact felt like losing something essential. I walked to the door on shaky legs, my resignation letter still sitting on his desk, like a bomb waiting to go off. James? His voice stopped me with my hand on the doorknob. For what it's worth, these 15 years haven't been you existing in the margins of my life. You've been the center of it. I just didn't know how to tell you. I left without responding, because if I'd stayed one more second, I would have either kissed him or fallen apart, and I wasn't ready for either. I made it to the bathroom before the shaking really started, locked myself in a stall, and tried to process what had just happened. He knew. He'd always known. And more than that, he felt the same way. 15 years of careful distance, of professional courtesy, of longing from afar, and we'd both been doing the same dance, both too afraid to break the pattern. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus, which was unusual. He usually called if he needed something. Dinner tonight? No pressure, just two people talking. My place, 7 o'clock. If you don't show up, I'll understand, and tomorrow we'll go back to being professional until your 2 weeks are up. I stared at the message for a long time. This was the moment. I could ignore it, keep my resignation in place, move to Seattle or somewhere else far away, and spend the rest of my life wondering what if. Or I could show up and risk everything for the chance that maybe, just maybe, 15 years of wanting someone wasn't a waste, but a foundation. I texted back before I could overthink it. What should I bring? The response came immediately. Just yourself. That's all I've ever wanted. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, going through motions, responding to emails, sitting in meetings where I heard nothing and contributed less. People asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. I was the furthest thing from fine. I was terrified and exhilarated and convinced I was about to make either the best or worst decision of my life. At 6:30, I stood outside his building, the same building I'd been to 100 times for work events and holiday parties, but this time felt different. This time I was here as myself, not as his assistant, not as the professional version of James that I'd perfected over 15 years. Just me, with all my fears and hopes, and the desperate want I'd been suppressing for so long. I rang the buzzer. He answered immediately, like he'd been waiting by the door. Come up. The elevator ride felt eternal. I checked my reflection in the mirrored walls, wondering if I looked as nervous as I felt. When the doors opened directly into his penthouse apartment, he was there, and he'd changed out of his suit into jeans and a sweater that made him look younger, more approachable, more real. You came, he said, and the relief in his voice was palpable. I almost didn't. I circled the block 3 times. I'm glad you stopped circling. He stepped back to let me in. I made dinner. Well, I attempted to make dinner. I'm a terrible cook, so we might end up ordering pizza, but I wanted to try. The domesticity of it hit me hard. Marcus Thornton, who commanded boardrooms and closed million-dollar deals, nervous about cooking dinner. For me, we ate pasta that was slightly overcooked and salad that was mostly just lettuce, and it was perfect. We talked about everything except work. He told me about growing up in Boston, about knowing he was different from the time he was young, but not having the language for it, not having any examples of what it could look like to be gay and successful and happy. I told him about my parents, about coming out to them in college, and having my father tell me I was going through a phase, about my mother's quiet acceptance, and the way she'd loved me anyway, even when she didn't fully understand. She would have liked you, I said. She always asked about my boss, wanted to know if you were treating me well. What did you tell her? That you were fair, demanding but fair, that I respected you. I paused. I never told her the rest of it. I think she knew anyway. Mothers usually do. Do you wish you had? Told her, I mean. I thought about it. Maybe, but I didn't even admit it to myself until after she was gone. Loving you felt like this impossible thing, so I just didn't let myself feel it. Or I felt it, but pretended I didn't. And now? Now I'm sitting in your apartment eating overcooked pasta and thinking about how I've wasted 15 years being afraid. Not wasted, he said quietly. We weren't ready. I wasn't ready. I was still trying to figure out who I was after the divorce, still learning how to be honest with myself. If you'd said something 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I don't know if I would have had the courage to do anything about it. We moved to the couch after dinner, and somehow the space between us kept shrinking until we were close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, close enough that when he reached for my hand, it felt natural to let him take it. I'm still scared, I admitted. Good. Don't stop being scared. Just don't let it make your decisions for you. What if we try this and it doesn't work? What if the reality can't live up to 15 years of imagination? Then at least we'll know. At least we won't spend the rest of our lives wondering. He turned to face me fully. James, I'm not asking you for forever tonight. I'm just asking you not to run away before we even try. My resignation, tear it up or don't. We'll figure out the work situation. Maybe you take that partnership I offered. Maybe you move to a different department. Maybe you do go to Seattle, but because you want to, not because you're running. But give us a chance first. Give this a chance. I looked at our joined hands, his fingers laced through mine, and thought about all the times I'd imagined this, all the nights I'd gone home and let myself want things I was sure I could never have. And here it was, being offered to me, and I was still afraid. Okay, I whispered. Okay, we'll try. He kissed me then, soft and careful, like I was something precious that might break. And maybe I was. Maybe we both were. 15 years of longing had made us fragile in ways that had nothing to do with courage and everything to do with hope. When we finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. Stay tonight. Not for just stay. I don't want you to leave yet. So I stayed. We talked until the sun started to come up, about everything and nothing, making up for 15 years of conversations we'd never let ourselves have. And when I finally left his apartment the next morning, walking out into a city that looked the same but felt completely different, I knew I wasn't going to Seattle. I wasn't running anymore. On Monday, I walked into his office and put my resignation letter on his desk. He looked at it, then at me, a question in his eyes. I picked it up and tore it in half. I think I'll take that partnership after all, if the offer's still open. His smile could have lit the whole city. It's open. It's been open for 3 years. Then I accept, on one condition. What's that? We do this right. We tell HR. We follow every protocol. We make sure there's no question about favoritism or impropriety. I don't want anyone to be able to say I didn't earn this. You've earned it 10 times over. But yes, we'll do it right. We'll do everything right this time. And we did. It wasn't easy. There were raised eyebrows and uncomfortable meetings with HR and a lot of restructuring to make sure there was no direct reporting relationship. There were people who whispered and people who judged and people who thought they understood our story but didn't, not really. But there were also quiet dinners and lazy Sunday mornings and the slow, careful building of something real between us. There was learning each other outside the context of work, discovering that 15 years of proximity had taught us more about each other than we realized. There was laughter and arguments and the terrifying, exhilarating experience of letting someone see all of you, not just the professional version you present to the world. 6 months after I didn't quit, after I tore up that resignation letter and chose to stay, to try, to risk everything for the possibility of something real, Marcus and I stood in his apartment, the same apartment where we'd had that first dinner, and he asked me to move in. We're probably moving too fast, he said. We should probably wait longer, be more cautious. We've been cautious for 15 years, I replied. I think we've earned the right to be a little reckless. So I moved in, and it was messy and complicated, and sometimes we fought about stupid things like whose turn it was to do the dishes, or whether we needed to attend yet another work function. But it was also coming home to someone who knew all my stories, who had seen me at my worst and best, who had been there for 15 years, even when we were both too afraid to acknowledge what that meant. People ask me sometimes if I regret those 15 years, if I wish we'd figured it out sooner. And honestly, I don't know. Maybe we needed that time. Maybe we needed to build that foundation of trust and respect and genuine friendship before we could build anything else. Maybe everything happened exactly when it was supposed to. All I know is that I almost ran. I almost let fear make my decisions for me. I almost spent the rest of my life wondering what if, living in some other city, working some other job, being some other version of myself that never took the risk. But I didn't run. I stayed. And that made all the difference.